Hello, happy President's Day weekend. President's Day is this Monday, and so I thought it'd be a good time to get some sewing done. And so this video, oh, I forgot the pattern, one sec. This video is going to be, I can't decide if I want to do it like vlog style or just kind of do a fast forward edit of me sewing this top, but in this video I'm going to sew pattern New Look 6620, which I'm wearing a sample of right now, and if I'm being honest, I'm not a fan of how it turned out, not because of the weird colors. Actually, this fabric, I cannot for the life of me remember where it came from. I think I got it from a garage sale, because it had a sticker on it that said 25 cents, and I do garage sailing a lot, so I think I got it from a garage sale. But I didn't have enough fabric, one piece of one color, to make the whole top, so I kind of just scrapped it together. That's why there's some weird color blocking going on. I think it's kind of fun, the color blocking, but I don't know if I'll ever wear it. But I also don't know if I'll ever wear it because it fits me oddly, and I don't know if it's just the drape of the fabric itself or if it's the shape of the bodice and whatnot. So you can probably see how much extra fabric I've got going on here, and there's no darts in this pattern either. So on my next go round, where I'm using this fabric, this is in the Silky Prints section of Joann Fabrics. This is just 100% polyester. I'm still scared to spend a lot on nice fabric, so this will do for now. But it has a little bit of stretch to it, just a slight bit, not too much. And so what I'm thinking is, because this does not have stretch, what I'm thinking is because of the little bit of stretch this has, it will, if I go down a size in the pattern, it will adjust itself, if that makes sense. So what I did, this was my mock-up, I went with a size small. And if you're curious, if you're going to sew this, my measurements, my body measurements are 34 bust, 27 waist, 37 hip. And so I just went with a size small with this mock-up to try it out. And I haven't even stood up to show you the rest here. So it's got a little tie right here. There's a hole in the side seam to bring the back through to the front. I hope you can see this. And this is what the back looks like. Which is weird, right? I thought the wrap would be in the front, but that's okay. So, where was I? So, for the mock-up, I just went with a size small. And this is what I got. The top is oddly roomy. So what I'm doing for this next try with my real fabric, and I hope it works, is I graded from the top part. I went from an extra small, and then around the waist I blended, that's the word, I blended the pattern to the small size. So basically the top will be an extra small, and then, because the waist to me fits fine. And if there's extra fabric, it's because it's a wrap top, it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm going to grade from the top being an extra small down to the hips, below the waist, down to the hips to be a small. I've never done anything like that before. I hope it works. And so, yeah, I'm just going to show you my process of making this top. If I have to provide a review for the pattern, by the way, as a whole, I haven't sewed a whole lot of garments, but this just was not my favorite. I thought there were some things that they didn't really think through. Like the tie right here. There's an angle on it, and what they had you do was just do a narrow hem on the whole edge of the tie. But they had you do this very end part last, so you narrow hemmed this side, narrow hemmed this side, and then you're left to narrow hem this side, which seems fine. But because of the angle it's at, when you rolled it, you were stuck with a little bit of raw edges still after you rolled it, and I didn't think I did anything wrong, so you can kind of see here. Hope you can see. I had to like MacGyver it a little bit just to tuck in the raw edges. So just some things I didn't think they thought through. So I'll know for the next round I'm going to do this end first and then do these long ends so that they can wrap over the raw edges. What else? Everything else was okay actually. I'm probably just nitpicking, but I really hope what I'm going to try with blending those two pattern sizes is going to work out. Trying to think if I need to tell you anything else. I plan to make some jeans in a next video out of this stretch corally peach denim to go with the blue top. And if you're not familiar with TomKat, Stitchery, and I think it's Stay Stitched. Oh god, I hope I get that right. They're hosting a challenge on Instagram/YouTube called The Great Modulesewalong, where you have to sew 3 tops, 2 bottoms, and a topper, so like a vest or a jacket or a cardigan or something, by the end of March. I'm going to try for that. I don't know if I'm going to make it just because I work full time and I travel for work too, so I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I'm going to try. So if I can, I'm going to sew a sew along video for these as well, so if you're interested, you can watch that as well. I think that's enough talking for now. Again, this is pattern N6620, and let's get sewing. Well, that sucked. I already messed up. The front bodice part I was supposed to flip from here, cut out that side, and then flip, cut out this side. But I cut straight down the middle, so now I have half of a bodice piece for no reason. That's a great way to start this. Ugh, okay. That's why we buy extra fabric. Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of prep work now. So I'm gonna do some pre-serging. There are some edges that throughout the process of making this top, they get tucked under the narrow hem, for instance. You don't need to serge those. But for the ones that will be exposed, like I know the shoulder seam, the side seams, I'm going to serge those. I'm going to do it kind of narrow just because this is, I don't know if this is right, by the way, this is just my logic, but this is kind of a fluttery fabric and I don't want a very wide serge to kind of impede its ability to flow. So I'm going to go narrower, just trying to reduce the bulk of thread, I guess. I have no idea if that's an accurate assumption, but that's what I'm going for. Okay. I must say my coffee is really good today. Just a little bit of cream, no sugar. The one thing I forgot to mention is the The pattern calls for a package of bias binding, but I don't think that's necessary because, for instance, this view I'm doing with the short sleeves, it's the only place I'm going to need binding is the front bodice neckline. That's it. And so it doesn't seem worthy to waste your money on a whole package of binding when you can use some of your scrap from your cutting fabric, or some of your scraps from when you cut your fabric to make enough binding for that. And then even so, if you're going to do the view without any sleeves, you're going to need binding for the armholes, and you could still probably get away with just making your own. It's super easy. You just cut on the 45-degree bias of your fabric, you just cut strips of fabric an inch wide. That's literally it. And then you sew them all together. I can show you how to do it. Okay. So this is going to make myself feel better because I won't feel like I'm wasting this anymore, this piece that I messed up cutting. But, so what you want to do is you want to cut strips an inch wide because the pattern calls for 1/2 inch single fold bias tape. So if you're going to make your own single fold bias tape, you just double what the measurement calls for. So it called for 1/2 inch wide tape. I'm going to double that to get 1 inch. So I'm just going to cut a 1 inch strip. Alternatively, if it calls for double fold, you quadruple it. So keeping that in mind, it called for single fold 1/2 inch. So what I'm doing here is I'm assuming if I cut right that this center fold line, it was a fold but I cut it, is in line with the grain. And I can kind of see here some of the fabric fraying. It's pretty much parallel with that. So assuming this is parallel to the selvage, that means if I go 45 degrees off of this, I'm going to have the bias. So what I'm going to do is I've lined this on my cutting mat on one of those lines on the mat. And there's also a 45-degree angle on the mat as well, so I'm going to line up my ruler with that. And then I'm just going to cut. And then I'm just going to keep it there. And I'm going to move it over 1 inch. Same angle. And cut again. This is where my quilting is coming in handy. You do a lot of this kind of stuff in quilting. And I'm just going to keep going till I feel like I have, I don't know, enough. Which you wouldn't know what enough is unless you've done the pattern, but I know because I've done it that I only need enough for 1/2 of a neckline. I already have plenty right now. So you would just keep going until you feel like you have plenty, and then I will show you, once I get to the sewing machine, how to attach it to make one big long strip. Okay, so now on to the bias, which, okay, I just have to say for a second, I just got this new machine for myself as a birthday gift. Oh, it's so good. It sews like butter, like butter. I have a, oh god, I don't remember the name. It's some advanced beginner level brother machine dedicated for quilting. I know it has Q in the name of the model somewhere. And that thing has served me well. It's made countless quilts, few garments, like zipper pouches. It's repaired things. I've hemmed so many of Zach, my fiance, so many of his pants. It served me well, but it just started acting up. And I'm getting to the point where I feel like I'm getting more advanced and it was holding me back. Like, if I wanted to sew more than 4 layers of quilting cotton, it gave me trouble. This thing, however, it just glides right over layers, and it's this thread cutter thing, love, 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 love. So anyway, enough gushing about that. This is, if you're curious, this is an HZL F300. There's also the 400 and the 600, I believe, which if I understand right, those are literally the same exact machines. It just comes with different accessories. I don't know, I could be wrong. I just got the 300. It's the quote lower end, but I'm very happy with it so far. The Crafty Gemini has a full review of this machine on her YouTube, and that sold it for me, watching that. So if you're curious, go watch her video. But anyways, back to how to attach these. So these were the bias strips we cut. So literally all you want to do is somehow make this one continuous line, right? So what you do is towards the ends here, you lay them right sides together, perpendicular. And I just eyeball this, but if you, by all means, if you want to pull out a ruler and get it exact, go for it. But literally, this is so easy, you guys. All you want to do is sew from here to here. You don't have to backstitch or anything. Just sew a straight line, corner to corner. Make sure you don't do it this way or it's not going to go right. But what happens is, when you sew from here to here, this will fold back this way and create your strip. And then you can just trim off the excess. I usually trim it to like 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. It's all gonna get tucked in anyway, and you don't want a lot of bulk. And the reason you want to do a diagonal seam like that is to distribute the bulk of this seam. So if we had it perpendicular to the edges, eventually they would fold over on themselves, like to encase a raw edge on an armhole, for instance, and then you're just sewing over more layers than you have to. So if you do it like this, and then you fold it, see, you've got all your bulk over here, and then over here it's dispersed. So that's why I do it that way. So I'm going to attach these real quick. Okay, so I did exactly as I described, trimmed off the edges right there. There's little triangles that'll stick off, trim those, and you fold it back and you got yourself a strip. And this will be plenty for 1/2 of a neck edge, don't you think? Okay, so that's why I recommend just making your own. Don't go buy some. Save yourself a little money there. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, I have my, you can't see, but I have my instructions on the table back here behind the machine. The first step says to stay stitched neck edge up front 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Some people don't believe in stay stitching. I do, because this is where we're going to be putting the neck binding. We're going to be manipulating it, so it is vulnerable to stretching out. I don't know if polyester stretches like this would be vulnerable to that, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I will go ahead and do that. Oh, I gotta bring up my thread. There we go. Okay. So I'm a little worried about this. It's kind of slinky and thin. So I'm going to start here, put my needle down, go back a little bit. See, I feel like my old machine, it would have like buried the thin fabric inside the machine in here, and it's not doing that at all. It's great. Okay, I'm going to go slow at first, because I'm unfamiliar with this fabric and this machine still. Okay, I'm looking back at these stitches. They look fine. So I'm gonna just chuck along. No puckering. God, these stitches are beautiful. I really am happy with this machine so far. Are you ready for this? Is that not so cool? I don't know why I backstitched at the beginning. You don't have to for a stay stitch, but that works just fine. Okay. Next step is the step with the binding. It says with right sides together with the bias tape open, stitch 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to start with the tape a little bit past, just so I don't have to worry about matching it. I don't think you have to bring up the thread every time like this. I'm just paranoid, and I feel like it's a nice clean start when the threads are laying back here like that. So that's why I'm doing that. I don't know if you have to every time. Okay, so I'm going to match these edges first. Don't worry about all this yet. These edges first. Bring it under here. I always like to wear my tape measure around my neck, just so if I'm doubtful of my accuracy, I can just whip it out and check. Okay, yes, that looks accurate. So I'm gonna put my needle down. I'm gonna go back. Okay. And then, so with curved seams like this, where it seems difficult to match your edges, your raw edges that is, you want to make sure you're matching right at the needle, because that's where they're connecting the two fabrics. Don't worry about all this right now. Focus right here. And you don't want to like stretch everything too much. Just try to lay it as flat as possible. The bias can like curve, that's what it's for. But try to keep the bodice part flat. And you're going to manipulate this to meet with it. But don't worry about this end so far. Focus right here at the needle. Do you just hear how smooth that sounds? It sounds like butter. It sounds like the Beamer of sewing machines. Maybe not the Beamer, maybe like the Porsche. There's some really nice sounding Porsches out there. Okay, I'm feeling like I'm drifting, so I'm gonna again check my seam allowance. I am just slightly, so I'm going to correct that right now. Okay. Oh, that's a bummer. Oh well, that's fine. I was saying that's a bummer because where we joined our bias pieces, that's right at the shoulder seam, which is going to make even more bulk, but we'll make it work. Okay. Alright, so I don't know where my scissors are. Of course, my scissors were under my pile of fabric here. All I did was I just trimmed off the excess bias. So now we're left with this on the neck edge. If I can show you, there we go. So now you want to understitch. Understitching is where you've got some sort of facing or bias like this, and you want to fold that back towards the seam allowance, and then you want to stitch that to the seam allowance as close to this seam you just did as possible. And I don't quite understand how it works, but somehow doing that makes it eventually fold towards the back very nicely, which is why we do that. So going to start back here, and I haven't pressed this yet. I don't find it necessary right now. Sorry, my battery ran out, of course, on my camera. In the meantime, I attached the back to the fronts at the shoulder seams. So here's that neck binding we just did for the front, and then I just attached at the shoulder seams here. And I left some of the extra bias tape just out for now. I was worried if that's our seam we made to lengthen the bias tape, and I was kind of worried of messing with it and it coming undone essentially. So I'm gonna leave it like that for now till I'm ready to continue with this area. For now though, I wanted to show you what I was talking about. So here's one of the tails, or the ties I mean. And do you remember how I was saying at the end here, when you narrow hem, it leaves out a raw edge? I wanted to show you what I was talking about. So what it says to do is it says to measure in from the raw edge 5/8 of an inch, which I'm just using a regular pin. So I marked a line 5/8 of an inch from the end. Then it says to crease it. And then for the narrow hem, it says to fold once to meet at that crease and then fold again. But do you see when I do that? See, it's creating this tail over here, and that's because this is at an angle. So the way it was before, it wanted you to do the long ends first and then the short end, which would leave you with that tail, which that's why I said I didn't feel like they thought it through. So what I'm going to do this time is the short end first, trim off the excess to make it flush with this, and then when I do the long end, everything will be tucked under. So before I forget, to wrap all this up, before I forget, I'm just going to go ahead and narrow hem this short end on both sides.